Greetings. Here we are, late July, and the heat of summer is upon us. I've had the privilege to be part of several camp meetings in some way, and I've been blessed by the opportunity to be with young preachers and also with district leadership, and I always celebrate the time that I have with church planners. Now, let me just kind of give you a reminder of the things we're talking about, which is developing influencers in your local church. If I could just sum it up this way, for some of us who want to be bigger than life, if you want to be the only cheese in your church, then you cannot develop leaders. If you want to be the only decision maker, if you want to be the only person who is shaping or influencing lives, then you cannot be a decision maker. I'm willing to assume that from this audience there are people who want to be influencers and who want to develop other people who will be influential as well. So what's that going to look like? What does it mean to influence other people? Well, you can do it in lots of forums, but there is one thing that's going to be non-negotiable, and that's time. In John chapter 3, verse 22, after these things came Jesus and his disciples into the land of Judea, and there he tarried with them and baptized. In speaking of this, he tarried with them. He was with them. He was with them for an extended period of time. This is the same word that is used in speaking of that early church, tarrying until. They spent 7 days or 10 days. It was an extended period of time. You can't develop influencers unless you spend time with them. Now, that doesn't mean you go from where you're at to where you're spending a week of vacation with people just in order to hang out with them. That's not what I'm talking about. You have to take this one step at a time. Don't try to act like that we can go with this and just be accomplishing it overnight. Wisdom, somebody defined as knowing what to do next, and that includes the process of developing leaders. You need to be sensitive to the amount of time that you can pour into them. It's a mistake for us to ask people to participate in something that we are not going to do. So right now, I'm asking you as a church planner or a pastor of 30 or 50 to do what I heard church planner Pedro Patrick do on the very first Sunday he had church in Montreal, when he announced to his fledgling handful of people, hey, Thursday night we will be having leadership training. Well, he didn't have any more than 6 or 8 people who were part of his church family. But today that church is larger. It has grown. Why? At least to some degree, it's because he began to develop people immediately who he saw as having potential to be influencer. That's what Jesus did. He didn't wait until he had a bunch of people won on the day of Pentecost. He began to pour himself into people and give them time immediately after they gravitated and began to follow him. His first converts were people that he immediately began to train and put into roles of responsibility. Okay, understand that a lot of what we're going to talk about today is about you as a developer of influencers. People tend to become what the most important people in their lives think they will become. Remember last month we talked about the importance of you seeing the possibility in their life. So I want you to stop for just a minute, and I want you to think about the congregation you preach to Sunday. And look in the face of each person. Go down the rows, or if you had church in a little circle or whatever, look into the eyes of each person in your congregation. What do you envision that person becoming for God? If you can't envision it, then it's going to be very hard for you to develop it. Everybody that you pastor wants to feel worthwhile. Means they want to have positive feedback, that they want some of your time, that they want a sense of you believing them to be responsible. Now, I'm going to confess that this is something that I have to work at. This giving positive feedback is not as natural to me as just breathing. But even if you're like me and you have to work at it, it has to happen. Everybody needs and responds to encouragement. So be an encourager of these people you're developing. Okay, the third thing that you will need to do is give care to each developing influencer. C-A-R-E. Okay, number one, communicate. Communicate always with key influencers and the influencers and process before you announce something to the general public. Never surprise your leaders or your leaders in training with a sudden change of direction that you just get up from the pulpit and throw out there. Communicate, communicate, over-communicate. Again, this is a spot we can all break down. Okay, secondly, give them appreciation. Give thanks personally, give thanks over the pulpit. Thank you cards is a wonderful way to express gratitude to their friends about the wonderful work that they're doing, because I can assure you their friends are going to repeat back to them what you said. Or give them recognition. This is thanks as a body. On occasion, you need to have people in the church family, even if it's a very young and fledgling group, you need to have that group express their gratitude. And then E, give them encouragement. Give hope continually. Imagine and help them imagine what they can become. If they're running into a problem in development, try to give them some things that would help them work their way around it. Okay, then what I'm about to say probably should be obvious, but I've come to discover that all obvious things are not. Love the people you're developing. Love the people that you're working with. Our congregations through the years have always had the same difficulties, issues, and problems that any other church had. But I made up my mind that there would never be a time that another preacher would hear me speak negatively about a church member of our congregation. Beyond that, getting this done, practical things. One, specific time for leadership training. Set a time right now, put it on your calendar, lock it in. Calendar, audience, you know who you got, you know who you're working with, you know what your schedule is. Shape it to fit yourself, but calendar it. It can be monthly, it can be bi-weekly. For most of us, monthly works, but do this. Even if you're doing it with one person sitting down at Starbucks or over a salad supper at your home on the second Tuesday of each month, do leadership development. Through the years, my own leadership training was open to anybody who wanted to come, and of course there were people that I specifically invited, and if we had ministry leaders, they had to be there for that. And then there were future leaders. They might even be fledgling new converts in the church, but there was something in them that I wanted them to begin to take hold of. If you don't have time to develop the leadership curriculum, there are things available from North American Mission Sales and other vendors, or you can use the lessons from HM Live or Mission North America. Use common sense. If you're just working with one viable leader, you can sit down at a table and just visit with them, and it'd be pretty casual. I did more accomplishing things with just relaxing and being with people than I did in some of the structured settings that others perhaps get more accomplished in. So relax. Jesus did it. He was simply with them. It's the time that's the most important thing as you develop leaders who are growing to grow your church in this process of the Apostolic Continuum. The greatest things happening in North America on this last week in July. Guess what? They're happening in church plants.